The low arousal approach to managing behaviours has evolved over really about the last 30 years. I often tell people I have the privilege of giving it its name. It's not something that we own as an entity, because low arousal is a concept as old as time. It's a form of pacifism, for want of a better word conceptually, about non-violence. But the original work I did was around arousal and arousal regulation. As a young care worker, I just happened to notice that the staff I felt safest with were the people who seemed to be calm and regulated all the time. And they were the people I wanted to copy in my day-to-day job. So that's really where it started. And as we started to think about what we're going to train people in, we had to start training people in what we call reactive strategies. Proactive strategies are thought to be the strategies that you use to prevent and change people's behaviours in the good old terminology of the past. Reactive strategies is how you react to situations in crisis mode. And one of the issues for me about low arousal was that in about 1980s, I was reading some amazing books by non-aversive practitioners, people like Gary Lavinia and Donlan, amazing people, who wrote two books called Progress Without Punishment and Alternatives to Punishment. And they use this proactive-reactive distinction. To me, I still think their work doesn't get enough credit. But the problem I had was, in both their books, the reactive strategies was only a tiny few pages. And there was no evidence base for what they were talking about. It was just, what do you do if somebody's in that situation? And my favourite was play dead. I mean, I read these things and thought we can do better than that. And the reason for it is, if we can't get people better at reactive strategies, they're not going to listen to us about the proactive strategies. I think the economist John Maynard Keynes said, in the long run, we'll all be dead. You've got to focus on the short run as well. And I think that applies to this area. So low arousal really emerged out of that, and some key themes emerged out of it, which was we noticed that an awful lot of incidents are inadvertently, not always deliberately, triggered by staff, carers, other people. So that's something we can change. I can't necessarily change your view of the world. I can't change whether you have a diagnosis, whether you have a brain injury. I can't change that necessarily, but I can change how I respond to you in crisis. So the key elements of that came from that, and originally the key elements was demand reduction in crisis. The mantra I use now is, when in doubt, shut your mouth. If you're not sure, walk out the door. Try, and don't say anything. You will escalate a situation. I mean, one of the biggest examples I came across is, don't tell someone to stop or calm down, because it will often escalate their behaviours. But we have this kind of word garbage and word salad we use. So demand reduction is a part of it, and it means literal demand reduction. Sometimes saying nothing, sometimes allowing people to regulate, sometimes taking a step back, because even our presence with someone is a non-verbal demand around people. Then we started looking at non-verbal communication. How do I stand? Do I have my hands up? Do I fold my arms? These are also very powerful cues for people when they're melting down, because when people are melting down, they're very, very stressed. And when they're very, very stressed, they're not processing things in the same way at that moment. I mean, if you think about it, we've all had a time in our life where we become stressed and overwhelmed, even seeing the red mist, for want of a better word. We're not exactly processing what the person's saying to us, but we are looking at how threatening they are to us. So the elements of this then became, how do we apply this to how we think about behaviours? And one of the elements of that was, if I see you as someone who's threatening and violent, I'm going to think I need to respond to you in a threatening and violent way. If I see you as someone who's stressed, traumatised, it creates empathy. Or as my colleague Damien Milton also says, is we need to create double empathy in these situations. So the approach has evolved over the years. And in my recent book, The Reflective Journey, we kind of outline the facts that this is quite a complicated area. But what it isn't is all the myths about low arousal. Low arousal doesn't mean sit and do nothing with people. It doesn't mean not responding. It's not just ultimate pacifism and turning the other cheek. But it does fundamentally say, my behaviour affects this person's behaviour. This I need to control. And to use a phrase that's now become a buzzword as the concept has evolved, to regulate other people, you need co-regulation. So co-regulation starts with us, how I respond, even down to things like people swearing at me or shouting at me. In a health context, it's different from other contexts. And I think that's where people have also confused the concept of low arousal. What I do in my day-to-day job is low arousal. It often frightens people when they see me do my day job, because I talk a lot, but not when I'm working with people who are distressed or traumatised. One of my colleagues said again recently the same thing. You're very different. Yeah, I'm very different when I'm around someone who's stressed, traumatised, frightened, scared, hypervigilant. They might hurt me if I start inadvertently portraying signs of threat. So low arousal is something I believe is a skill, it's something we can practice, it's something we can get better at, and actually it's something that a lot of us do.